As a trauma therapist, clients frequently ask me, why do I have PTSD because of, for example, a car accident or a divorce? People have it so much worse and are just fine. Another common question is, how did I get through, for example, a sexual assault or a war without any issues? Most people would be scarred for life. One of the first things I talk about in trauma therapy is how trauma is defined. We need to address this up front, or people will continuously downplay their organic responses to what they've experienced. Instead of trying to understand themselves, they will spend time judging whether the event was worthy or not worthy, or their response to it. It's far more helpful to understand why you reacted to an event in a particular way, rather than evaluating whether the event rose to a particular threshold or not that warranted your response. Are you ready to learn more? Keep on watching. Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Cammy, and I'm the president of Bliss in Being. I help trauma survivors just like you build the life that you deserved from day one. Safety, connection, trust, wealth, and confidence. You can have all that and more when you leverage your hardest moments into your greatest strengths. Trauma is not defined by the event a person experiences. Trauma is defined by how a person relates to the event that they experience. Horrific events like sexual assault, armed robbery, war crimes are not always traumatic. Likewise, universal hardships, heartbreak, death, financial strife, illness are not always innocuous. Someone might experience an armed robbery and never meet criteria for acute stress disorder or PTSD. Likewise, someone might experience the death of a pet and meet criteria for acute stress disorder and PTSD. Again, trauma is not defined by the event itself, but rather how a person related to the event. First things first, what is trauma? Trauma is defined as a person's response to any event, big or small, that overwhelms their ability to cope. Yes, you heard that right. If a person is unable to cope in the face of an event, any event, we consider that a trauma. Naturally, the next question is, how do we know when an event surpasses our ability to cope? Before we get here, I want to ask the same question, but in the opposite way. Let's talk about a distressing event that did not surpass a person's ability to cope, and therefore we would not consider traumatic. I'll share a quick story about my client. Let's call her Aman. Aman and her parents immigrated to California from Pakistan when she was in high school. On the first day at her brand new school, Aman was encircled by a group of students and taunted for her headscarf, which she was wearing as part of her Muslim faith. A teacher quickly intervened and called Aman's parents. While the teacher was calling Aman's parents, Aman walked directly out of the school building and went home. She refused to go back to the school after that day, saying very clearly that she wanted to be in a school with more Pakistani and Muslim students. Her parents consulted a family at their new mosque who recommended a local school that their teen daughters loved. Aman's family homeschooled her for the next 3 months and then transitioned her to the new school the following semester. Before Aman reached home that day, Aman's parents had already Googled trauma therapists in California and scheduled an appointment with me. They wanted to make sure their daughter was not traumatized by the egregious discrimination she experienced at school. I met with Aman the very next morning and for 6 months thereafter. In short, Aman was not traumatized by the event she experienced. I will explain how and why in a moment. But in the meantime, let me respond to some questions that might just be running through your mind. So 1, was this the worst event of Aman's life? Yes, it was. 2, did it change the way she saw the world? Yes, it did. Did it impact the way she views herself? Yes. All that said, Aman did not experience stress that surpassed her ability to cope. even in the moment the event was happening. I asked Aman about her experience in the moments when she was encircled by the students, and here's what she said. I had some nerves because no one has ever talked to me like that, cursing and laughing and pointing. But I knew the teachers would come and help me. Nothing really bad was going to happen to me, so I wasn't too scared. Schools in America have police and guards. Some of the guards even have guns. A teacher came really fast because she was in charge during free time, so I was saved from any harm. I then asked Aman about her experience in the weeks after the event, and here's what she said. My dad has always been our protector. He has always made a good path for our family. And my mom is very loving. She helps everyone through emotional difficulties. My sister is older, and she told me about times back in Pakistan when kids would steal her lunch. She said that people do bad things, and that has nothing to do with us. We should just never be around bad people and only be around good people. Aman did not meet any criteria for acute stress disorder or PTSD. Why? Because Aman was able to cope with the effects of this horrific event. We can see from Aman's responses that both her belief in community and the way her belief was realized played a huge role in this event being horrific, but not traumatic for Aman. Let's dissect this a little bit further. When Aman was surrounded by the students, she believed that the American school system, equipped with police and armed guards, would come to her rescue. That meaning making left Aman feeling confident that she was safe and would ultimately be protected. And then a teacher quickly intervened, which reinforced Aman's meaning that she was never truly in harm's way. Aman also had an unwavering belief in her family's ability to take care of her. She believed that dad would protect her physically and mom would care for her emotionally. Her sister had also been through difficulties in school and offered her concrete advice that she then acted on. Avoid bad people and befriend good people. Aman's meaning about her family also came into fruition. She took her sister's advice and refused to go back to school with bad people. Her dad paved a path for her by finding a different school. Her mom was an emotional caretaker and homeschooled her until she could transfer to the new school. The world of safety and protection that Aman had built in her mind came to life in one of her most difficult moments. She was able to cope because she held a global meaning, I am safe, loved, and protected. That was then reflected in her life. Now, we may not agree with Aman's meaning making. For example, that armed guards in schools symbolize protection, or that her father would always keep her safe, or that her mother would be the one to always look after her heart. But for the purposes of this video, we are not trying to challenge Aman's worldview. We are just trying to understand how it served to protect her from PTSD. Now, just because Aman was not traumatized, does that mean she wasn't deeply impacted by this event and would benefit from therapy? Absolutely not. Aman was deeply impacted by what happened to her. We talked for months about how this event shaped her identity, her immigration journey, her trust in others, and her relationship to family. An event can be seriously impactful without it being traumatic. Now, let me share another story with you. I met a young woman, let's call her Daisy, who was about Aman's age. She and her mom had recently moved from the Midwest to California. Her mom called me after she discovered Daisy was refusing to attend school following a bullying incident. When I inquired about the incident, mom explained that Daisy was assigned a lab partner in science class. Daisy and the lab partner got along well and started talking outside of class. The very next day, a group of girls grabbed Daisy's cell phone and were kind of tossing it from girl to girl, just outside of Daisy's reach. And as they played catch with the phone, they taunted Daisy by calling her a slut and a traitor. They accused her of flirting with a lab partner who happened to be the boyfriend of one of the girls. Daisy ran out of the classroom and locked herself in the bathroom. A school counselor found her about an hour later when she never showed up to her next class. I met with Daisy about 1 month after this incident and worked with her for a year thereafter. I asked Daisy about her experience in the moments when the students were taunting her. And she said, I could barely breathe. My heart was racing. Teachers never pay attention during free periods, so I was totally on my own. I didn't know how far those girls were going to take it. The bullying in my last school was so bad, one of my friends unalived herself. She took her own life because they just pushed her over the edge. It was on the news and everything. That's part of the reason we moved. My mom didn't want me to end up like that. So when the girls were screaming and yelling, throwing my phone, all I could think was, maybe this is it for me too. I then asked Daisy about her experience in the weeks after the event. And she said, I just tried to deal with it on my own and also talked to my best friend through Snapchat. She stopped answering me though, and I think she found new friends and dropped me because I moved. Also, it's much more expensive in California than Michigan. My mom is working 2 jobs and she is the most stressed I have ever seen her. I don't want to bother her with my problems. We moved here to give me a better life, so I should just be grateful. But I kept having these nightmares about what happened, and I'm scared to even leave my room anymore. I guess that's just life, though. You have to figure out things for yourself and know that people can't be trusted. They can turn on you at any minute, so you better be ready. Daisy met criteria both for acute stress disorder and later PTSD. Why? Because the distress that Daisy experienced from that event surpassed her ability to cope. We can see that in her description of the way her body reacted, difficulty breathing, heart pounding, fleeing to the bathroom. We can also see that in the way her mind rationalized what happened. I guess people can't be trusted in a way that will leave her generally quite isolated and afraid. We can see from Daisy's responses that she had some belief in her community, mostly her best friend, but overall felt quite alone and vulnerable. The small belief she had in her best friend's ability to support her was dashed when the friend stopped responding. Daisy then created a narrative as to why this was true. Daisy said to herself, well, this makes sense. I am replaceable and unworthy. That's why my friend dropped me. Similarly, Daisy believed that mom was too stressed and busy to support her emotionally. She felt a sense of guilt that mom moved to California for her, and therefore she should be grateful and not burden mom. Now Daisy has a new narrative that ultimately won't serve her, but gave her some way to at least understand what was happening in the moment. Both of these young women benefited from therapy, but for very different reasons. If you want to hear more about the ways that trauma impacts the brain, check out my other videos because I talk a lot about that.